This clip comes from Frank Turek's debate with Christopher Hitchens on God. We're going to focus on Frank's opening statement because here he presents a very compelling argument for the existence of God that Hitchens fails to address throughout the entire debate. I'm going to give my thoughts after Frank's presentation. Let's get into it.
Let's start with the cosmological argument, and this is basically the argument from the Big Bang, that the universe had a beginning. If it had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. Now, for some reason, Christians are afraid of the Big Bang. I'm not afraid of the Big Bang. I believe in the Big Bang. I just think I know who banged it. Now, the evidence for the Big Bang is good. I'm going to give you evidence in an acronym, SURGE, S-U-R-G-E. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I think even Christopher in his book on page 65 says the Big Bang is the accepted origin of the universe. S stands for the second law of thermodynamics, that the universe is running down. As that sun is up there, it is burning out. Ultimately, we will go to heat death, as Christopher has said in his book. Well, if the universe is eternal, that sun would have burned out a long time ago, but since the sun is still up there and we still have energy here, the universe must have had a beginning. The second law of thermodynamics also says that ordered things go toward disorder. It affects this school. We have to paint the walls. We have to put gas in our car. The second law of thermodynamics also affects us as human beings. When you get older, the second law of thermodynamics is seen by the fact that we all get dresser disease. That's when our chest falls into our drawers. See, that's the second law of thermodynamics. The U in SURGE is the fact that the universe is expanding, discovered by Edwin Hubble in 1929. Hubble deduced that if the universe is expanding, if you watched everything in reverse, you would see it collapse back to a point, mathematically and logically to nothing. So the universe exploded into being out of nothing. The G stands for the great galaxy, the R stands for the radiation echo, discovered by accident by Penzias and Wilson, two scientists working at Bell Labs in Homedale, New Jersey. They discovered basically the radiation afterglow, or the remnant heat from the initial Big Bang explosion. The heat is still out there. It's just a couple of degrees above absolute zero. Now, good theories predict future discoveries, and they said if the radiation afterglow is out there and the Big Bang really did occur, we ought to find very fine temperature variations among the radiation afterglow. So they sent up a satellite in 1989 to circle the Earth. It's called the Kobe Space Satellite, to measure this radiation afterglow. And for 3 years, they found nothing until they tuned their instruments just a little bit more precisely and found that there were temperature variations in the radiation afterglow, and they were down to 1 part in 100,000. George Smoot, the leader of the expedition, said, if you're religious, it's like looking at God. Stephen Hawking said this is the greatest discovery of cosmology, perhaps the greatest discovery of all time. Those temperature variations allowed galaxies to ultimately form, so we could ultimately be here. The E in SURGE stands for Einstein's theory of general relativity, which says time, space, and matter are correlative. You can't have space without time. You can't have time without space and matter. And in effect, it says that the universe came into existence with space and time together. In other words, once there was no time, once there was no space, once there was no matter, and then bang, out of nothing, the universe exploded into being. What is nothing? Aristotle had a good definition of nothing. He said nothing is what rocks dream about. Nothing. There was no thing. There was not positive and negative energy, as Isaac Asimov has said. There was not a vacuum. There was not swirling mathematical points, as Dr. Atkins has said from Oxford. There was nothing, what rocks dream about, which means that the universe exploded into being, all space, all matter, all time, out of nothing. And several scientists have pointed this out. Stephen Hawking said almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Agnostic astronomer Robert Jastrow, the man who sits in Edwin Hubble's chair, or who did until February when he died, he was an agnostic. He sat at Mount Wilson and looked through Hubble's telescope. He wrote a book in 1978 called God and the Astronomers. And here's what Jastrow wrote. Or here's what he said, actually, in an interview. He said, astronomers now found they've painted themselves into a corner because they have proven by their own methods that the world began abruptly in an act of creation to which you can trace the seeds of every star, every planet, every living thing in this cosmos and on the earth. And they have found that all this has happened as a product of forces they cannot hope to discover. That there are what I or anyone would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact. Wow. Why isn't an agnostic astronomer saying supernatural forces are at work? Why couldn't nature have created the universe? Because there was no nature. There was nothing, what rocks dream about, and then the entire space-time continuum leapt into existence. If it's not a natural cause, by definition, it must be a supernatural cause, something beyond the natural. In fact, Arthur Eddington, the contemporary of Einstein, who was an expert in general relativity, said, quote, "The beginning seems to present insuperable difficulties unless we agree to look on it as frankly supernatural." So the cosmological argument leaves us with one question. Either no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. The atheistic view is no one created something out of nothing. The theistic view is someone created something out of nothing. Which view is more reasonable? I think Julie Andrews had it right. Nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever could. That's the cosmological argument. The teleological argument, the design argument, actually has two arguments contained within it. It is the argument from design, and there are dozens of factors about the universe that are precisely designed for the existence of the universe and life. So not only did the universe explode into being out of nothing, it did so with incredible precision. Stephen Hawking has noted that the universe would not exist if there was a decrease in the expansion rate 1 second after the Big Bang by only 1 part in 100,000 million. This led Hawking to conclude it would be very difficult to explain why the universe should have begun in just this way, except as an act of God who intended to create beings like us. Not only is it designed in terms of its expansion, but the gravitational force is so precise. If you change the gravitational force by 1 part in 10 to the 40, nothing would exist. What's 1 part in 10 to the 40? Stretch a tape measure across the entire known universe. Set gravity at 1 inch on that, anywhere on that tape measure. If you move gravity, the force of gravity, 1 inch in either direction, we don't exist. There's also factors about our universe, in particular our solar system, that cannot be explained unless there's a designer behind it. For example, the Earth rotation, 24 hours, just right. If it was a little bit more, a little bit less, we wouldn't be here. The axial tilt, 23.5 degrees, just right. Change that a little bit, we're not here. The Jupiter being in its current orbit. If Jupiter wasn't there, we'd be bombarded with space material. Why? Because Jupiter acts as a cosmic vacuum cleaner. It attracts all the cosmic space junk to it rather than us. There are a number of other factors I don't have time to get into, but Arno Penzias, the man who co-discovered the R in surge, the radiation afterglow, said this: "Astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which as an underlying, one might say, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan." A friend of Christopher, atheist Steven Weinberg, who is an atheist, put it this way: "Life as we know it would be impossible if any one of several physical quantities had slightly different values." So not only is the universe precisely tweaked, and by the way, there would be no life unless the universe was precisely fine-tuned, as I just mentioned, but life itself is designed. Let me take you to your breakfast table for just a second. Suppose you wanted to have a bowl of alphabet cereal. You're a teenager, and you come downstairs to have a bowl of alphabet cereal, and you see the alphabet cereal's knocked over, and the letters from the alphabet cereal are spelled out on the placemat, and it spells, "Take out the garbage, Mom." What are you going to assume? Cat knocked the box over? Earthquake shook the house? Or are you going to say, no, that's intelligent design from an intelligent being? Or let's say you're laying out on the beach and you see in the clouds, "Drink Coke." What are you going to assume? Unusual cloud formation? No, you're going to say there has to be a skywriter up there, even if you didn't see him. Why? Because messages only come from minds. Well, it turns out there's a message in all life called DNA. We all know about it. All life has a message. I have DNA, you have DNA, a banana has DNA. In Darwin's day, it was not known how incredibly complex, simple, so-called simple life is. And they thought that maybe simple life could come together without intelligent intervention, and ultimately natural selection could take over. It's the theory of macroevolution. I'm sure you've heard of it, from the goo to you via the zoo. From the infantile to the reptile to the crocodile to the gentile. That's the theory of macroevolution. The problem is that now we know that this intelligent life couldn't have come together by natural laws, because we now know that the simplest life has the amount of specified complexity or information in it in terms of DNA of 1,000 complete sets of Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, who's that according to? Not a Christian, not a theist. That's according to Richard Dawkins from his book Blind Watchmaker. I think it's page 116. Now, to believe that that resulted by natural law is like believing that the Library of Congress resulted from an explosion in a printing shop. See, I don't have enough faith to believe that. So life appears to be designed. In fact, Antony Flew, who was an atheist, a very prominent atheist, but recently became a theist, or at least a deist, as a result of this evidence, said, it is impossible for evolution to account for the fact that one single cell can carry more data than all the volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica put together. It now seems to me that the findings of more than 50 years of DNA research have provided materials for a new and enormously powerful argument from design. How am I doing on time, Dean? 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Design is so prevalent that even people like Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of DNA, Sir Fred Hoyle, who coined the term Big Bang in a derisive way, are now, or were, proponents of panspermia. Seeds everywhere, in other words, that life got deposited here by aliens, which is just kind of a backhanded way of saying that there's no way we know how life came by natural causes here. There must be aliens out there that brought it here, which of course just puts the question off one more step. Where did the aliens come from, right? There's a lot more on the design argument, but I'm running out of time here. Let me just give you one quote from Chandra Wickramasinghe, who is a student of Sir Fred Hoyle. He said, "The emergence of life from a primordial soup on Earth is merely an article of faith." Sir Fred Hoyle said, "A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature."
So that is the most compelling, one of the most compelling cases I've ever heard for the existence of God. But many of you still are going to walk away from this video being unconvinced. You are not going to walk away and believe in God. You're going to think it's all made up or a delusion or whatever it is. And that makes me sad because I want all of you to experience the relationship I have with God. But the scriptures, the Bible talks about that we should expect this. You know, Jesus was showing miracles to all these people back in the day, and they were still not believing him. He spoke in parables, but many did not understand or ignored him or mocked him or scoffed at him and thought he was stupid or crazy or just lying. And it's heartbreaking that I know some of you aren't going to believe, but the Bible also says that since the beginning of the earth, the God's invisible attributes, everything, all of his character has been shown in the world around us. If you look out my window, you look over here, you see the trees and the birds and the grass and the squirrels and the design of the whole universe. It's evidence of a creator in itself. You know, I just spoke to my baby cousin the other day. She's 9 years old. And on the way to church, I asked her if she believed in God. And she looked at me and said, "Well, yeah, isn't it obvious? Look around. You think this was all random? You think this all just appeared?" And that shocked me, but that's exactly it. And the Bible also says that we should approach God like a child, with a childlike understanding, not to be dumb or have blind faith, but to approach him in humility and let go of all of our ego and pride, and to approach him on his terms. And the Bible also says that if you ask, it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock on the door and it shall be opened. And that is God telling us that if we seek him, if we seek after him with an earnest heart, and we humble ourselves and realize that we can't do it on our own, that we fall short, that we make mistakes, that we hurt people, we do evil. I mean, we do good too. We do good, but we also do evil. Like I myself, I'm a pretty mixed up kid. I mess up all the time. Just yesterday, I hurt my girlfriend. I hurt my friends. I probably hurt my parents sometime this week. And I want you to believe, but if you're going to meet God on his terms, which you must do to come to him, the Bible says that faith in God comes from hearing his message, and hearing his message comes from the word of God. So if you truly want to figure out if he's true and talk to him and have a relationship to him, you got to speak to him through prayer and listen to him. Listen to him, and to listen to him comes through reading the scriptures, the Bible. So I encourage you, if you don't believe in God, if you're questioning, or if you do and you have doubts, go to the Word, read it. If you haven't read the Bible, I recommend reading the Gospel of John and going from there, because that's where Jesus is with his life, and it's all about Jesus at the end of the day. I mean, if you don't believe in Jesus, you will not be saved. And to be saved and to trust in Jesus comes through having trust in him to save you alone, him alone, to save you from all of the evil deeds and things that you've committed against him. And I guess that's all I have for you, but gee, I love all of you, and I've just been really touched by all the comments I've been getting and all of the attention that's been thrown my way, and I don't deserve it. I mean, my hands are the one making these videos and recording this. I am, but I recognize that this is all God's doing. It's not my own, and without him, I would not have the strength to be able to do this or to speak with you in this way. All my practices would get wicked and filled full of pride and fame and seeking money, and those are temptations that I face, but it is through God's power that I am able to be with you like this, lowly in heart. And so I wish you a new year, and I love you, and I want you to have the best life. And I think that the best life that you can have comes through having a relationship with God, with Jesus. Have a good day.